Every time I close my eyes, I see you in front of me.
Let's embark on a journey of knowledge and discovery. Let's learn from the extraordinary lives of the greatest in the art of living.
The art of living.
Join the conversation with hosts Dr. Wael Harasi and Dr. Lamia.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Dear listeners, I salute you with the salutation of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. We are delighted to announce that we are back on the art of living, and we are going to be broadcasting, inshallah, every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. So we look forward for you to tuning in. We're going to discuss lots of interesting themes now, inshallah. And one of the themes we're going to talk about starting today is about balance. In the studio, as usual, is me, Lamia Al-Haj.
And Wael Al-Harasi. And I would like to say that I'm so happy that we are starting this show again. There was a lot of positive feedback from all our listeners regarding the show, and I'm glad that we are starting this weekly show. Unfortunately, it's not a live show. However, you can always contact us on Twitter to join us with your ideas, your thoughts before the show. So you could join us, and I'm sure that you'll be happy to follow Dr. Lamia Al-Haj on Twitter at Lamia, LAMYA _Al-Haj, ALHAJ. There is no numbers to call. You can always contact us on Twitter, Wael Al-Harasi as well, or Wael Harasi at Twitter. And as Dr. Lamia said, we are going to talk about balance. Balance is one of the most important things in life, and it is something that people do not get right. A lot of people are asking, we suffer in life. We can't have a particular balance. We can't really strike a balance. So the theme of these coming weeks will be balance in life.
And we're also open to suggestions. So if you do log into the Twitter and you can let us know what you would like us to talk about, we are open to suggestions from the audience. If you want us to discuss this particular matter, then please do let us know what those points are.
Absolutely. And we have chosen for the first episode to start talking about balance in parenting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But before we go into parenting, if you look at life in general, not only human beings, but everything in life, everything in the universe is very well balanced. If you look at the universe and how Earth revolves and orbits around the sun, and everything else, the planets revolving and orbiting around the sun, just to strike that balance, everything is well balanced. Atoms and neutrons, electrons, around the atom, cycle of life,
how nutrients go around and
everything. We've just finished Hajj, and part of that is actually going round the Kaaba, and it is to maintain balance, spiritual balance. We are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to maintain balance on earth,
to achieve harmony as well.
To achieve harmony, and to do that, it needs a lot of work. It needs patience, it needs knowledge, and it needs a lot of work. It's not easy to strike a balance, but the journey we need to enjoy as well.
Absolutely.
We will fail sometimes, but we will learn from it. With every failure, we need to learn from it. So we don't say that we are experts in
Not
balancing life, not at all, but we're just sharing experiences with you, and maybe just talk about things that might be of interest to you, and talk about ideas that might spark an avalanche of ideas, and maybe you could discuss with your families later on.
Yeah, you don't have to be a parent to tune in and listen to today's session, for example, because this is something that is related to everybody, whether you are a parent or you're an uncle or you're a friend, because we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about two sides of a balance, where we have on one side parents who overparent, or there's different terminologies, there's strict parents. On the other end, we have the underparenting, or the more loose parenting. And then we're going to discuss how we can get to that midway between the two sides of parenting. So even if you're not a parent, stay tuned, and hopefully we can get together, we can put some tips together that will, inshallah, help you in the future. This is going to be just an open discussion to discuss different types of parenting, and from our limited reading, share what we have read with the audience.
And this is today's topic, is about balance in parenting. But next week it will be work-life balance. How do we strike? How do we manage our time? How do you spend it in a very balanced way? So we give people our time, and with some of the time we spend it for ourselves. There is the body, mind, and spirit balance. How do we strike that balance? But Dr. Lamia, if we talk today about balance in parenting, how do you define a strict parent or over-parenting as a style?
I guess, first of all, it'll be useful to classify the different groups of parenting by example. So if we can imagine a balance, just think of it as a line, and you would have the over-parenting on one end, and then you have the under-parenting on the other, and you have the balanced parents, which strike that perfect balance in the middle. If we are to just describe what kind of parents look like, so if I say, this is a person who is over-parenting, I would say it would be somebody who has a lot of control over the child, whether it be a lot of control over his time, of his behavior, a parent who gives so many instructions, who gives too many rules, and maybe also has high expectations from the child, which will lead to little freedom of choice and maybe a little bit too much supervision.
But high expectations, I could be very loose and have high expectations with my child. But that would be unrealistic.
Yes, unrealistic.
Yeah? Totally unrealistic. So expectations could be on both extremes.
Absolutely.
But let's say authoritarian.
Yes.
Yeah. Being so authoritarian, using authority. Using power always. And maybe even using fear to teach children, or to
threaten sometimes.
You could be abusive. So there are a lot of examples of extreme parenting. Not allowing the child to make any decision, to take any decision, not allowing the child to be free in life and be a child. To me, that is an extreme. That you are expecting, or someone is expecting from a child to mature very quickly.
And we want to make it very clear here that this kind of parent is not necessarily a bad parent. This can be a parent who loves the child so much and wants the best for the child, and it's most probably is the case. But this parent does not realize that by over-parenting, you're actually harming the child more than you are benefiting him. And we're going to talk about how that happens more towards into the program.
So that is over-parenting. What about loose parents or under-parenting?
I guess it will be the opposite of the overparenting. It'll be somebody who has very little control of the child, who gives them unlimited authority, decision-making, no responsibilities, maybe a little bit more towards the carelessness side of parenting.
I would say some of them do it out of, carelessness. They can't be bothered. They can't be bothered.
Or some of them are just simply busy.
Yes, some of them are very busy. And some of them, they just do it intentionally, thinking that they are building the self-esteem and self-confidence of the child, and that they need to learn from their mistakes, and that it helps them mature into the world much more earlier than others.
Yes.
Yes. But although there is some truth in that, but sometimes the way we execute this freedom makes it work against us, against the child, against society, and against parents.
Exactly.
Yeah. For example, when you allow the child from a very young age to do whatever they want, you don't tell them what to do.
Guidance.
You don't guide them. You don't tell them what is wrong, what is right. And then when they reach the teenage age, you start seeing the things.
Back.
Yes. When the teenager is so rebellious, they're not used to take any orders. And when you start seeing bad things happening that could lead into very extreme, dangerous results, you start giving guidance. And then they never listen.
Yeah, but mind you, Ali, that can also happen in the case of overparenting. The child had so much, he's fed up with all the instructions he had as a child. And when he gets to a teenager, he also turns to a rebellious child.
Yes.
So that's why it's a very important topic to discuss. It's actually, when I started reading about this, I started thinking, I took a step backwards, and I thought, okay, what kind of parent am I? Am I the overparenting one? Am I towards that scale, that end of the scale, or am I over towards the underparenting? And I think I actually found it very hard for me to answer the question myself. So I think it's actually important to get help from outsiders. For example, it can be asking your child or asking your husband or wife to give you an overview of what do you think, think
you've mentioned a lot of things here that are very important. One is stepping back and asking yourself, what type of parent am I? That is very important. And sometimes you might be biased toward yourself, Some people might just beat themselves up, and probably underrate themselves and be so hard on themselves. So it's a very good idea to ask other people around you, what do you think of me? Ask your husbands, ask your wives, what do you think? What you mentioned about asking the child is very important, because I think the most honest response you will get is from your own child, because they're so observant and they have so much attention to details that the answer you'll get from your child, you will not. It will be shocking. They're not diplomatic, they're straightforward, and they're very innocent, and they will give you the truth as it is.
Yes,
I've tried it with my children, and it worked. It shocked me, but it also was a relief. But you need to make sure that you have the right relationship with the child.
Absolutely.
So they could open up to you and answer those questions. Unfortunately, when you said that you might have found yourself at the extreme overparenting side of the scale, it's not only you. I think it's the majority of us. I would categorize myself on that area as well. It's probably the culture and how we are raised. It's all about obedience. Instructions, obedience, and respecting the elderly and respecting parents. If you are allowing your child to do things more freely, a little bit with a little bit more freedom, it doesn't mean that they are not respecting you. I don't think it has anything to do with respect. I believe going either extreme will lead to some sort of disrespect either sooner or later.
Absolutely. And maybe if we are to, if you find it difficult to ask somebody around you, if you want to find out what kind of parent you are, what kind of criteria would you put on yourself to find out what type of person you are? So, for example, I would say I would look at my child's schedule and see how busy did I fill it? Did I fill it up with lots of activities and homeworks where I leave him with very little time to play and explore the world around him? Am I a kind of person who gives a lot of instructions? Do I give my child a chance to, discuss a specific topic with me, or is it just like follow orders? So maybe if we look at these things, am I overcautious with safety, for example? Are you kind of parent that says, no, don't jump off the table because you might hurt yourself, or don't go on the scooter because you're too young, or don't use this bike because you might hurt your leg or fall off.
You've hurt yourself once, don't do it again.
Exactly. That's all examples of overparenting. But if you find yourself not doing that, so maybe you're not so much of... these are obviously very few examples of...
I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this and might disagree with a lot of what we say, but probably the next few minutes when we try and explain how to strike a balance and how we could take some aspects of overparenting and some aspects of underparenting, marrying them together, and create that balance. It is very important, because there isn't really, and it's very important to say this, is that there isn't really a hard line. There is always a gray area. There isn't something, it's not black and white.
Absolutely.
There is always the gray areas where you need to be very careful and reassess. But what I would say is that always start in the middle. Start in the middle. Do not be خير الأمور أوسطها. The best things are those which are moderate, right in the middle. Be moderate in your approach. Start in the middle. Sometimes with certain children, you need to be very strict with, and some of them you need to be very loose with.
And the age group as well.
And there are a lot of things. Age group. You need sometimes the psychology of the child himself. Some children are oversensitive, and some of them are not. So you need to assess. You don't deal with all your children exactly the same way. That is not fair. You might be treating them equally, but equally does not mean fair. You need to be fair with your children. Yeah, you don't expect people to treat you equally like everyone else, but you expect people to treat you fairly according to your own abilities. So some children, you might need to tell them twice to do something. Some children, you don't even need to tell them. They already know what you want, and they will do it before you even say.
Although it's the same bringing up, it's the same parenting, but the children respond to that parenting in different ways, and we need to acknowledge that children are made different, and it's absolutely fine. And we need to take the time to study these kids and understand them and how they feel, because some children are more, as you said, some of them are more emotional than others. Some of them don't even care when you tell them off. Some of them are very sensitive about it. So you need to also strike that balance and understand the nature of your child.
And I think loose parents, or loose parenting would recognize this more than the overparenting. In overparenting, you don't have the time to actually...
You're too controlling.
But sometimes with loose parents, they might be able to see. They might not do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's just loose. But they be able to recognize this. Yeah. But recognizing the differences between personalities helps a lot.
Yes.
Because you need to shift in that scale. Sometimes you need to be a little bit more strict. Sometimes you need to be a little bit more lenient.
And that's where you need to get to the midway in treatment.
Yes.
Well, before we talk about this, let's go talk a little bit about the psychology of the parents and why they actually do what they do. We said that overparenting and underparenting, these are all good parents. They are trying their best to be their best, but they don't recognize or they don't realize that they're either overparenting or underparenting, which we'll fire back later. Mm-hmm. So why do each parent do what they do? Let's talk about the overparenting first. The people who do, they're also called, by the way, they're called helicopter parents.
Wow.
Because they hover on top of their children, not giving them any chance to do whatever choices they want to make, but they're literally involved in every aspect of their life.
By no means I'm not an expert in this. However, if I try and reflect on what I have seen and what I probably observe myself and observe others as well. One, why do people be strict or choose to be in the other side of the scale, which is overparenting? One, overprotection.
Yes.
Overprotection, they want to ensure the safety of their children, both physical, emotional, and they're just so scared that their children might turn out to be bad children. Mm-hmm. They grow up to be bad adults. And that fear...
They're anxious about it.
So make them live a very anxious life and allow the children to be anxious as well.
That's true. And also, continuing on what you were just saying, that maybe some of the parents who do that are perfectionists. So they are worried that the child will make a mistake. And they want to make sure that they're involved in every aspect of the child's life, in their homework, in the way they dress, in the way they eat, because they don't want the child to make a mistake. They want them to be perfect. And that kills the creativity in the child and the learning experience in the child's life. So
I love mistakes.
Yeah, that's the only way you learn. Exactly.
Yes, and mistakes makes people who... You also discover the people who love you, because those are the people who come and tell you you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So mistakes are very important in our lives.
Yeah.
We don't do them intentionally, but we need to allow children to make those mistakes.
And they need to understand that this is part of life. There is nobody who does not make any mistakes. You make mistakes at work, you make mistakes with the relationships with people. So they need to learn it from younger ages, because it is actually part of life. And parenting is actually to prepare the child to face the world.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us without any perfections. So we are not perfect.
Yeah.
And He created us with the tendency to commit mistakes. Mm-hmm. If mistakes were not good, then He would have created us without mistakes.
Flawless. Yes.
Flawless, absolutely flawless. Can He do that? Absolutely.
Yes.
But we need to learn from these mistakes. And sometimes our mistakes bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
Because once we realize and we are reminded of Him, we repent. Yeah, and that whole process is very important.
Absolutely.
Not to repeat a mistake is also is totally different story.
Yeah.
But
intentionally.
Mistakes, yes, absolutely.
Because sometimes you tend to do the same mistake again and again. Because for some people, it takes longer to learn from the mistakes than others, as long as it's not done intentionally.
Absolutely. So overprotection is unhealthy.
Yes.
Unhealthy, totally unhealthy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You need to allow children to make mistakes.
Explore.
To some extent. Then the second reason why people choose to be strict is easy control. Being very strict and instilling fear in the hearts of children, then you can control them, at least in the short term. You can control them very easily. When children sees their parents and suddenly they're not doing anything, they stop whatever they do, you know. Sometimes some parents think, yes, I've won. Yeah, I've smacked them, I've spanked them, I've yelled at them, I've abused them verbally. So now they listen. They know who's the daddy, you know.
They know who's boss.
and who's the boss. And, you know, it's very easy control.
Yeah.
Very easy, very fast.
It's a
but
shame
very
because you
dangerous.
lose the relationship, the father-child relationship kind of gets...
Absolutely.
It becomes more authoritarian rather than, you know, being friends with a child.
An authoritarian based on fear.
Yes.
It's all based on fear. That rather than teaching the children values and following values, you teach them to be fearful. And this is very dangerous. Very dangerous because they will carry it over to adulthood.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example from my own experience in the corporate world. We implemented a system where we wanted people in a company to tell us what went wrong, how can we learn from our mistakes. Sometimes we came across situations where we interviewed people and asked them, can you tell us, if you see something wrong, will you tell us that this is wrong and we need to do so and so? I said, sometimes I can't. The response is that I will not, because the decisions were made by people who are very high up in the hierarchy. If I say this is wrong, it might affect my promotion. I might get done. I will be seen that I'm criticizing my boss, my manager. So I'm fearful.
Well, do you think this is an example that is reflected from a childhood bringing up? Do you think that kind of person has, that has resulted in a person because as a child he was not used to going against the parents'
It's probably
instructions or orders or whatever?
Probably. I wouldn't say for certain. If it's not in childhood, it could have been done to them at a later stage, maybe at work.
So it plays a role in decision making and also giving your opinion, simply as giving your opinion.
Yes.
I think that, before we get into, we're going to talk about, the harmful effects of overparenting and underparenting.
Before that, another reason, which is very dangerous, selfishness. Mm-hmm. When parenting becomes, it's all about the parent and it's nothing to do with the child.
Can you give us examples?
For example, I just feel moody. I come back from work. I really don't care what the child feels, how they feel, what they achieved, what they accomplished. All I want is to rest, and I want absolute quietness.
أنا تعبان.
I will do whatever it takes to shut them up. I don't want them to talk to me. If they fight, I'll hit them all. If they talk loudly, I'll yell at them. So it's all about me as a parent. And I totally forget that I am responsible for raising these children.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we need to understand what is parenting.
Exactly.
What is the ultimate goal of parenting?
Yeah.
But before we go to that, we talked about why people are strict. Yes. If I may ask you, why are people underparenting, in your opinion?
Well, I think that, in my humble opinion, I think there's two groups of people here. Mm-hmm. Maybe a group who thinks, okay, I'm not going to get too much involved in my child's day-to-day activities because I want my child to be independent. I want him to be responsible, and I want him to make his own decisions. So it comes from a good intention. The other group of parents who underparent is simply because they're very busy. They're just too busy to parent, and therefore the kids end up with the nannies, and there's absolutely no parenting. And some people might be surprised listening to this, and they go, oh, come on, who does that? I know of families where the child does not see the parents. The parents leave to work or studies before the children wake up.
Yeah.
The nanny gets up and gets them ready, takes them to school with the driver, comes back, she does the homework with them, and the parents come back after the kids go to sleep. There's absolutely no parenting.
That is selfishness.
That's selfishness, and that is literally the other extreme of carelessness, and I would say no parenting. Yeah. But on the other hand, as I said, there's a group who thinks, well, I'm going to be a good parent. I don't want to get too involved in the child's decision because I want to have a responsible decision maker, not thinking again that underparenting is not going to achieve that goal.
Yes, sometimes I would like to create a leader, leadership skills, and try from a very young age, teaching them to take responsibility of really great decisions, without understanding the different age groups and what sort of decisions shall I allow the child to make at this age. I will not, for example, I was talking with a group of people about drugs in schools, and that I took my children away from certain types of schools because these schools are more associated with children who take drugs. Yeah, and one of the people just said, "Aren't you over controlling them? You need to you need to expose them. Yeah, you need to expose them. You need to allow them to see these things so they could make their own decision. That is too loose."
No, you wouldn't put your child in the middle of a danger zone and say, I want him to be experienced and see how brave he is. You don't throw him in the middle of a catastrophe and expect him to float.
Absolutely. So to those listeners who think that we might be talking theoretically, there are people actually who think like this. Who think that just allow them to witness the world as it is. If there are, for example, areas where ladies are not wearing properly, modestly, you should allow your child to go and just see. I have had this discussion with a headmaster of a school who believes, expose them, let them have a look and see flesh that is healthy for them. That is in a school in Oman.
I'm assuming the head teacher is not an Arab or not.
Yes, he's not an Arab, he's not a Muslim, and he believes that this is how you raise children, to be more liberal.
I think while this is a different topic, because then we're talking about, because the idea of parenting might be different from one society to another. Because we are influenced by our religious teacher. We are influenced by Islam. We are influenced, we're going to talk about this in a bit, and talk about what is the role of parenting in Islam. As Muslim parents, what should we do? That might be slightly different in different...
Absolutely, we are influenced by our religion and culture. However, the whole universe is becoming like a small village.
True.
You have the internet and everyone has access to the whole world through their mobile phones. So a lot of parents are reading from websites that come from everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and they're adapting ideas from other cultures.
Yeah.
So the influence comes also from the internet and from other cultures very easily nowadays.
Yeah.
So it is very important that we are aware of all these ideas and maintain whatever is good from our culture and disregard any bad activities or bad behavior, or let's say bad practices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the goal of parenting. So we spoke about overparenting and underparenting, but we didn't really have a clear sentence on what is parenting.
And I think this would be the message that we would like to take today with us, and would like to the listeners to take home, is what is the ultimate goal of parenting? When I am a parent, I have a child or several children. When I guide them or look after them, what is it that I'm trying to achieve?
If you ask me personally, I don't know what the definition out there is, and I'm sure there's loads of different definitions and different answers from different societies and scholars. But for me as a parent, because I'm a parent of 2 boys, I would say my goal is to bring up a child who would be able to face the world. So I want to be able to prepare him physically, mentally, and morally to get to a stage where he is independent and he can face the world. And that was also influenced by Islam, by the teachings of Islam, because I also want to bring up a child who has the value of love of Allah and fear of Allah. Yeah. Because I strongly believe that once that is fulfilled, everything else falls in place.
Yeah.
Because you will find all the other teachings about education, about health, and everything in Islam.
Yes.
So if everything revolves around pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I think if I instill that one value in in my children, it'll tick all the other boxes.
Yeah. So parenting, basically what you're saying is that the ultimate goal of parenting is to ensure the health of our children, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, psychological health,
Absolutely.
everything, to allow them to enter the world and contribute to building civilizations and building this earth, which is our ultimate goal on this earth when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us.
Exactly.
And there comes also the religious aspect, which is being obedient and fully submissive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fearing and loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfilling the duties as a human being, fulfilling our duties as citizens, fulfilling our duties as slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely.
And work towards an ultimate goal, which is being in paradise and being the winners.
And some people might not find it easy to relate, but you'll be surprised to see how eventually everything goes back to that one single point. For example, if a child gives you back answers, you can go about it two ways, saying, oh, I'm your parent and you have to respect me and this is not appropriate. Or you can say, you know, what do you think Sayyidina Muhammad would think about this if he was here? Do you think that's a good Muslim behavior?
Yeah.
Do you think Allah is going to be happy with that?
Yeah.
So once you instill that factor, I mean, I was surprised a few days ago. I had just a little bit of food left in my plate. And I said, oh, I'm full. I can't finish my food. And my 7-year-old said, can't you just finish one more spoon so you don't have to upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, if I were you, I would finish that spoon. And I felt like, because if you instill that one value,
Yes.
everything revolves around. Like, for example, tidy your room. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قال,
Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal.
and
Yes.
the Islam, you know, is asking us to be clean and tidy. So as a good Muslim, I expect you to keep your room
Yes.
tidy. So it all goes back to that one point, which is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and refrain from anything that upsets him. Drugs goes under that. Bad companionship goes under that. Everything falls under that umbrella.
Yes, and probably a lot of people might say, you know what, you need to let them explore, and find out what sort of faith they want to choose. From an Islamic point of view and from the teaching that we have from the Quran, we have several verses and instructions from the Quran. One, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So our ultimate goal has been set, is Allah is telling us that He has created mankind to worship. And part of worship is actually learning, educating yourself, and building the universe, and building a civilization, contributing to building a
Contribute
civilization.
to society as well, yeah.
We have the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, كل مولود يولد على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو يمجسانه. Every single child is born naturally as a Muslim, as a faithful, as a believer. As a believer. And it is the responsibility of a parent to sway them to different beliefs. So it is natural that a parent will always try and direct the child towards a certain way of believing.
Yes.
Once the child reaches a suitable age to actually explore, then nothing stops them. You need to teach them to explore other faiths, to respect other faiths, to understand them. And they have the absolute freedom to then choose whatever they want. But as a parent, it is my ultimate duty to ensure that my child remains a good Muslim believer, as a Muslim parent.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we also have a hadith about, responsibility towards our children or parenting in general. It's a general hadith. All of you are heads of a group, and all of you are responsible of your group. The ruler is the head of the state and is responsible of his people. The man is head of his family and is responsible of his family. The woman is head of her husband's house, and she is responsible for the house. So in short, we have an obligation for parenting. Parenting is not an option. If you have a child, you need to parent him.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can choose. So the aim is to understand what's the best way for parenting. And I think maybe now it's the best time to talk about how can you actually strike that balance. Now we know that we spoke about parenting. We spoke about the different kinds of parenting, overparenting and underparenting, and the disadvantages of both groups. And now we know that there's an urgent need to understand, first of all, after you realize what kind of parent you are. So first of all, we need to identify what kind of parents we are, and acknowledge that we have we have gone a little bit further to the right side or the left side of the scale.
Yeah.
Once we acknowledge that there's an issue, then only we can change to be a better person. And there's absolutely nothing wrong to keep on trying to get to that midway.
Yeah.
Because as we said, it needs a lot of patience and it's a hard job. So what are if we are to put bullet points, how can we strike that balance between overparenting and underparenting?
Before we go into that, I think we need to talk a little bit more on the disadvantages of going extreme, either side. We talked about depriving kids from internalizing self-discipline. For example, if someone who is very strict with their children and everything is an instruction, everything is done based on fear, instilling fear in children, then when actually will the child be able to have self-discipline? That will never happen.
Yeah.
Because people who use fear and use power, they never use reason. We need to use reason with children when we tell them how to do things, why to do things, why not to do things. So we need not to deprive our children from internalizing self-discipline. And when I say self-discipline, discipline sometimes is associated negatively with punishment. But if you look at the word discipline, it comes from the word disciple, which means a teacher or a student. It's about teaching. Exactly. Discipline is teaching. So we need to have that a child who is maturing and could observe his or her own actions. Yes. And that only comes through proper teaching and proper guidance without giving orders all the time. Using authority all the time, it will only create someone who is always fearful and
or
rebellious with no self-esteem. Would be an adult with no self-esteem whatsoever. You are raising a child in a very strict way, then what you teach the child is power is always right and is not reason. So if you take someone who has always been raised with power and authority, they never can argue with someone using logic and reason. They will always fail. I'm right and that's it. Yeah. Ask them to use reason or logic, most probably they will not be able to do so.
I wonder if such children as well who are exposed to, let's say harsh discipline, are these the same kids who go to school and bully other children?
Absolutely, because that's the way they have been raised at home by their loved ones.
Yeah, so they think it's okay.
It's okay.
Think it's just a way
if
of
my father, my mother
people.
love me, and this is what they do to me. They yell at me, they abuse me verbally, they smack me, they hit me, they punish me. Punitive discipline is not always correct. You don't punish your child every time. You don't go, I know, I do this. I punish my children all the time, but it's not right. This is the way we have been taught, and this is the way we think it's easier to discipline our children. But I don't think it's right. Using punishment, you just lose even the effect of the punishment if you just keep punishing all the time. Yeah. It loses its effect.
I wanted to draw attention. I just thought about this right now. I mean, overparenting does not necessarily have to be associated with physical abuse or with punishment. Overparenting can be somebody who is very, very soft, who does not use any force to bring up the children, but simply is involved in every single aspect of the child's life.
Yes.
To an extent where some of these kids, when they go to college, they can't even make decisions because they're used to mom and dad telling them what to do and when to do things.
The kindest parents in the world. The kindest parents in the world.
But still, it has negative implications on the child.
Yes.
In terms of decision making, in terms of being a leader. Yeah. If you're just waiting there, all your life to receive instructions from your parents because your parents are overprotective, then you grow up into a person who does not really necessarily have leadership skills.
Yes. When you said leadership, it's leadership depends a lot on relationships, and one of the things that a child will lose and will be deprived of is a relationship with their parents if they are very strict. there would be no opportunity to speak. So if you actually go and ask the child, how do you think I'm doing with you? They will never speak up because that relationship is not there. You need to build a good relationship based on dialogue and communication, continuous communication with children.
And this reminds me of Manisha's show back in Ramadan, when she was talking about the family sessions where we have to meet up at least once a week, sit together and discuss, what have you been doing? And that was also one of the characteristics of Rahmatullah alayhi Sheikh Khalfan al-Aysari, where he used to get his family together every Friday and listen to each one of his children, what they have to say and how they feel and what improvements have they done. So they are very good examples of parents who actually managed to strike a balance. It's a shame we don't have the chance to pick up calls to I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to contribute and have comments, but again we would like to remind them that we do log into our Twitter accounts, and we will be more than happy to get the feedback on this session. And if you have any comments that you want us to discuss or any topics that you think are a follow-on to this session, then please do log in. Going back to maybe, did you want to talk a little bit more about that, or should we talk about?
We need to talk about the negative impact of loose parenting or underparenting very swiftly, just before we go to how to strike that balance.
Yes.
So what do you think? What do you think of loose parenting? What sort of negative effects can you think of?
Well, I believe that. I mean, I obviously I can't pinpoint things. On the top of my head, but I would believe that it will result in an irresponsible child. Yeah. Because he's not used to having any sort of guidance. So maybe he'll grow up with a sense of lack of responsibility, carelessness. Carelessness, and maybe even
no respect to the law.
No respect to law,
because they're never used to have a particular law at home.
Yeah. So, and it can result into a chaotic person as well.
Yes.
Because there's no order. When he was brought up, there was no kind of order or discipline or mentoring throughout the childhood. So he grows into a chaotic person who might not even know what he wants to become when he grows up, or what he wants to be. He might not even have a clear vision of what he wants to become when he grows up, because there was no guidance as a child.
And you don't have to be very loose to have a child who is independent thinker, because a child needs a lot of guidance at first, and that guidance you need to let go bit by bit
as the child matures.
But one very important thing, and this will come later, on how to strike the balance, but it is very important to say, giving the child the freedom at a very young age might lead them to disrespect law, disrespect elderly, disrespect their own peers, because they are selfish. They've always done what they want. They always did mistakes and never being taught that these are actually mistakes. And sometimes we might punish our children by giving them too much freedom, because they might do mistakes that are irreversible.
Yes.
And they will pay the price. So where is our role as parents? We need to intervene. And here where we strike the balance.
Yes. There's a few points that we can discuss on how to strike the balance, which is something that we all want to achieve. I am the first one who I would love to really get closer to the midway between overparenting and underparenting. Maybe is one of it is to give a child options. And what I'm gonna do here is just to give some simple examples, just to send the message out there, maybe in the form of an example. I have a child who's 7 years old, and I sit there, I sit down and look at the homework that he has on a daily basis. I think the balanced way of doing it will just be supervising the overall, explain the instructions of the homework and then leave. Let the child do his homework by himself. And I only realized that I wasn't doing that after I went to the parent meeting, because I would sit with my son, explain to it, and I would sit with him, like watching him do the homework.
Yeah.
Because maybe at the back of my head, psychologically, I'm thinking, I don't want him to make any mistakes. I want his handwriting to be perfect. I want it to be, a full mark essay. Yeah. And when I went to the parents' meeting and I said, I'm spending so much time with my child doing homework. You're giving him a lot of homework. And the first thing she asked me is, do you actually sit there when he does the homework? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And then I realized, okay, maybe I'm overparenting over here. And this is one very simple example
Yes.
that I didn't realize at all. I might be doing the same mistake on other examples.
Yeah.
Maybe, getting ready for school. I would assume that a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, even a 5-year-old can actually get dressed by himself. He can pull out the clothes from the cupboard and he get dressed himself. Overparenting would be somebody who will pull it out, get the child dressed up, brush his hair because he wants them to look perfect and all the buttons are done properly. And so that way you're not giving the child the independence, you're not giving him the chance to develop himself.
One of the things also is when children get into fights and disputes, you can very easily get there and ask who's right and who's wrong and give them a long lecture.
Yeah.
But what I normally do is say, they know what is right, they know what is wrong. And they're around between 7 and 10 years old. So I say, sort it out yourselves. Don't come to me complaining about your brothers and sisters. If I don't see blood, if I don't see blood anywhere, I don't mind. Yeah, just go and sort it out yourself.
Why do you think that's what kind of skill do you think they develop by doing so? I mean, I agree with you, but I wanted to just
Conflict
highlight
resolution. Understanding that they are not enemies, they are brothers. They can talk. Yeah, they don't have to use their fists all the time. Because boys will always use their fists. So I want them to speak to each other, talk to each other, have a conversation. And I want to teach them also to walk away from areas of conflict. If talking doesn't yield anything, then just walk away. Walk away. You don't have to show your strength. Strength sometimes is just walking away. And I teach my children this, if someone hits you, just leave. Tell them not to do so. If someone says something bad to you, tell them, may Allah forgive you. Allah ysamhak. And leave. Don't reply back. Teach them initially and then just let go. Whenever they do it, say, well, I've told you what to do, then you're free. Just do whatever you think is right. I've told you once. Just go. With that, I need to stress on a very important point when striking a balance. We need to understand the different age groups.
Yes.
So from a very young age, they don't know anything. They know very little. And I as a parent, know much more. And I transfer some of those skills according to the age group to the child. And I give them a lot of guidance.
Yes.
Once they reach a certain level of maturity, I take a step back and allow them more freedom. I give them more freedom.
Absolutely.
But I ensure that before I give them the freedom, I give them the right ammunition.
Yes.
The right preparation that they can face the world to a certain extent with freedom.
Exactly.
And then I teach them more skills that will help them when they reach a higher age group. And then I take 2 steps further. But before I take 2 steps further, I make sure that I do my duty as a parent and give them guidance.
Absolutely.
So stepping back before giving guidance is unfair on children.
You're expecting too much from them.
Because I would expect my mentor at work to teach me.
Give you the basic skills and then observe from the distance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives them comfort.
Yeah.
And it builds a good, loving relationship between parents and children.
So this is very obvious that in trying to strike that balance, that communication and talking to your children is an essential part of striking the balance.
Yes.
Once you realize that you're not balanced, then you have to speak to your children and see what they think of the way you're parenting them. So the communication is very essential, and talking to your children, because that's the only way you can, as you said, because it depends on the age group. So you're talking about an ongoing process. Parenting is an ongoing process. There's no point in life where you stop being a parent. You're always going to be a parent.
Yes.
So communicating with your children and getting feedback from them is essential to strike that balance.
Yes. One of the things is that when you talk to children, you need to understand that you need to ask them sometimes in a very good way. You have observed, let's say you've observed a negative attitude in a child.
Yeah.
There was a situation that the child behaved or acted in a certain way. Rather than immediately attack them personally, Never attack them personally.
Yes.
Attack the action, not them. Secondly, you can also do without attacking the action. You could discuss it. I've seen that you've done this.
What do you think?
Why did you do it that way? Do you think that was the right thing to do? What do you think? Before you give them any guidance, before you give them any instruction, let them speak out.
Yep.
Let them explain their own experience, and they will let you know why they did it. And then if you think that the way of thinking was not right, you can adjust it.
Yes.
By giving them the right way of behaving, reacting, and why. And you don't need to punish them. You don't need to tell them off.
Yes.
Even without telling them off. I believe this is how you should have dealt with it.
Yeah.
Because so and so.
Yeah.
And that's how you build a personality, a leader. Because that's the way he will teach others. He will behave with others. And teaching them how to think, that is how you build self-dependency.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
And not by giving them ultimate freedom.
That's a very good example of how you can reach midway, because now you're doing a bit of both. You're doing a bit of the guidance and supervision and giving the advice, but you're also stepping backwards and giving him the chance to be responsible or decide for himself what he wants to do. So this is a very good example of how you can actually reach strike that balance. I think also it might help a lot to get your partner involved, your husband, your wife, because it's a tough job, and if you're overparenting, then the husband or the wife can say, I think you're getting too involved in your kids' very small decisions. You need to give them some space.
But never do it in front of children.
Oh, absolutely not. Yes.
Yeah, never do it in front. If it is okay to disagree, but disagree away from children.
Absolutely.
Always show unity in front of children. Even if you disagree, but show unity.
Yeah.
Because that way children will not lose respect for any of the parents.
Of course.
One of the things I would like to add on how to strike a balance with children is when they come and ask for something that you say no to, and they insist, what would you do? Personally, I would assess. Mm-hmm. What is the worst thing that could happen? If the risk is very low and nothing really, really bad would happen, would endanger the child, and they really insist, it's very easy to tell them, okay, do it. Rather than insisting, and I'm your father, I've said it, that's it. Shut up. Let them do it.
Yeah.
And you know that it's just a matter of time when they actually commit the mistake and they will realize it.
Yeah.
So once they realize it, don't tell them, I said so. Just say, what did you learn from it?
Yeah.
This is exactly why I told you why not to do it. Yeah. So what do you think?
And then just walk away.
Yes.
Let them think about it.
Let them think about it.
Yeah.
They will learn two things. One, that my parents are wiser. I need to listen to them.
And it's not a tug of war. It's not a competition.
Yes. And secondly, I've learned from my mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is very important sometimes to do a risk assessment.
Sometimes you can always throw back the decision making to the child himself. And I was telling you this while that I have my son who comes just before bedtime, and he's got restricted 30 minutes of iPad, 15 minutes after school, 15 minutes after the homework. That's it. That's the rule. So sometimes he tries to get an extra minutes. He'd say, Mama, can I use my iPad now? Although he has his 15 minutes left that he didn't use, it'll be bedtime. So I would just say, Tala, look at the time. What is the time for right now? And he would immediately just give me the smile and say, bedtime, Mama. So I wouldn't even have to tell him no. I wouldn't even use the word no.
Yeah.
And I said, but you know what? You have your 15 minutes for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you can have it tomorrow. So
okay.
that makes him learn that next time I'm not going to ask at bedtime to to use the iPad. But what I did basically was just refer the decision making back to my son, and he felt like he was confident because he made the decision, or I didn't say no to him.
I hope that the listeners benefited from this topic today. And just before we end and we close the show today, when conflict happens between parents, when one is so loose and the other one is overparenting, what do you do? What do you think?
That's a tough question. I think, again, even we need to strike a balance between the parents. Yeah. Because sometimes I don't think it's so much of a bad thing when one parent is overparenting, the other one is underparenting, because that's when you sort of meet halfway through, but the child might get confused.
Okay. I think this is something food for thought and for discussion for everyone. We'll leave it there. Next week, inshallah, dear listeners, we'll be talking about creating a balance between life and work and life balance. Is there such a thing as work-life balance?
Working moms, stay tuned.
Yes, absolutely. Mom and dads, everyone, stay tuned next week, inshallah, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Thursday, inshallah. So from me, Wael Al-Harasi.
And Lamia Al-Haj.
Assalamu alaikum.